Trayvon Diggs is getting closer to returning to the field. When might we see the Cowboys all-pro cornerback again? We'll discuss that and more next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. You can also check me out over on the Locked On Dynasty Football podcast. And joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Landon, we're going to talk about some more OTA notes from the Cowboys Tuesday practice that was open to the media. But before they even got onto the practice field, we got a Trayvon Diggs update. Brian Schottenheimer said that it's going well. All signs are positive. He said, I got a chance to talk to Trayvon last week. He's down in Miami doing some training. No timeline for his return, but he had to come back a couple of weeks ago to get checked out by the doc. It sounds like he's progressing well. Where are we at in this rehab?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think, usually the way we are kind of marking the time in these rehabs are obviously the time since the injury, but also kind of where he is in the Britt Brown process, right? Like, is he on the cords yet, or is he still working on the sides? And since he's not part of this rehab group, and we're not getting kind of shots or ideas of that, it's hard to know, right? He's been down in Miami. He's working with this Dr. Reef guy that I think his brother also was working with, recovering his ACL. And he came back. Steven came back. Stefan, sorry, he came back. Like a month or two earlier than I think he was.
Well, Trevon Diggs is already running routes and OTAs with the team.
Yeah, so I mean, it does look like they're clearly getting some work done while they're there, and they were working out together. He released a video today where he was doing some ladder drills. They've said, it sounds like, according to what was on the tweet, that they were doing some limited, kind of low contact, position drills. So I mean, this is all good progress, right? Like, and it kind of puts him in line to attempt to try to be back for week one, but obviously we're still a long ways away from that. And definitely it's harder to kind of gauge this without getting the kind of telltale signs that we usually get from him being in part of the Britt Brown rehab group.
All this just seems so weird with Trayvon Diggs because we've just had so many different thoughts. Like, it's pretty clear, like the Joneses weren't happy with his rehab last year. But it sounds like Brian Schottenheimer is pleased where he's at right now. It seems like he's taking this a little bit more serious than he did last year. But there's also a part of this that we got a tweet from Todd Archer from ESPN that says Diggs is in danger of losing $500,000 in base salary because he hasn't attended off-season workouts with the Cowboys. Now, obviously, he wasn't going to be able to attend anyways because he's injured. But I think if he would have just shown up or rehabbed at the Star, he would have earned that money. I'm fascinated to know why Trayvon is willing to turn down $500,000 to not rehab in Dallas.
Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of the interesting thing. And I think some people were reading this as like, indictment on the Cowboys, but it's like, I mean, that's the contract that he signed. So why didn't he show up for any of that? That was completely optional for him, and optional with the one of the options including $500,000 in cash.
I would be ready to be for $500,000. Like, don't worry.
Fair. That's fair. That's a fair take to have. I think it's. A lot of this is kind of baffling. It feels like there's an adversarial relationship right now that's going on,
right?
But I don't really know why. Like, maybe I think Trayvon could be a little upset with the idea that is kind of out there in the zeitgeist that maybe the Joneses weren't happy with the way he attacked his recovery. But I don't really feel like it was that big of a deal. And I do feel like, look, there may be something to the idea that he didn't work hard enough to kind of fully recover, and that may have contributed to why he re-injured the knee. So I think there is something to this, but I can't really tell what it is. It does feel like there's some anger there, or there's between the two sides, but like, it seems to be happening all behind the scenes, and this is kind of pot shot taking, through
Yeah.
the media.
Yeah, so we still don't know when Trayvon's going to be on the field. I think it's fair to expect him to be on the PUP list, meaning that he's going to miss probably the first month of the season. I don't think the Cowboys are going to rush this. I think they want him whenever he comes back to be 100%. So I think we'll see him on the field before Halloween, and I think anything before that is an added bonus.
Yeah, I think the what you're shooting for, shoot for the stars, is trying to not be on start the season on PUP. I don't know if he's going to make that or not. We'll see. More than likely, they'll be more cautious than anything, like you said. And yeah, I think if in that case, Halloween feels like a very realistic goal for this.
All right, we got some other cornerback news from Cowboys OTA. Let's start with Israel Mukuamu, a player that
Yeah.
we've liked for a while, who the Cowboys decided to bring back. Playing out wide as a corner, playing in the slot, playing all over.
Yeah.
It feels like this is, I'm hoping finally the year that they unleash Izzy Mukuamu.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a guy obviously every dayers know how we feel about Izzy McCool.
Yeah.
We've been talking about him for years, right? So I do like that they're kind of giving him an opportunity to play more outside, especially in a more zone heavy scheme where he's going to be able to play with the boundary, run up and down the sideline, not have to chase guys across the formations. Everyone kind of forgets that he was an outside corner in college. That's what he transitioned from, a boundary corner to inside to play safety. So this is kind of him returning home in a lot of ways. I think that there's reasons that he didn't come into the league as an outside corner, because I think you probably play him there with very limited capacity and what the coverages you may be using. But I think that he's certainly worth taking a look at, just to see what you've got, especially on kind of assembling a game day roster, just to know what you've got in the defensive backs and who can play where. And I think it gives them more flexibility if, there's an injury on the game day. So, and right now you haven't really got the kind of nickel situations solved, and they're throwing a lot of bodies at the problem just to see who can kind of handle it. So, I like that also includes getting Izzy some snaps, maybe outside where he wouldn't normally be getting snaps.
Couple other cornerback things. Kalen Carson, the Cowboys rookie from last year, who actually started week 1 against Cleveland. He's been dealing with a shoulder injury. He had offseason surgery, not quite out on the field yet, but I think the belief is that he'll be ready by the time we get to training camp. He might even be ready to do some stuff on the field in mini camp next week, but he's getting close.
Yeah, I think this is a really important one, because it just kind of helps set a floor. I mean, I thought he really gave you some good reps early in the season, especially that first week. He really played some good football for a rookie coming in, starting in week 1. And we saw a lot of really great stuff from him in training camp. So I do feel like he took his serious lumps in the middle of the season, but that he's also the kind of guy that would take that and internalize that. He battled like a veteran last year during training camp. I can imagine that also means he's going to attack this rehab and get better at playing his position coming in. I wouldn't even be shocked to see him be a guy that's in the mix for some of these slot snaps when he comes back potentially.
No.
So I think look, he's a guy that maybe he's not someone in contention for those starting 3 spots, but if he could come in and play at a level that you kind of hoped that you saw at training camp last year, he could be a very valuable backup. Him and Elam, once you get healthy.
What another nice day it seems like at OTAs. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a sec for sure, because I think him and would be a nice floor. And Elam, let's go ahead and talk about Elam, right? Like, again, coming in there, getting another pass breakup. It seems like every single open practice with the media, he's gotten a pass breakup against somebody, like Pickens or CD, So, again, like, it's about like snaps and percentages and exposure, right? Like, I do think that there's an opportunity to get some nice play out of Elam, but by just not overexposing him. And I think if you can just have him help you get through that time period we talked about, Halloween, right? When you think Diggs will be back, when Revel will be back, when, Carson, maybe by the time he's ready to start coming in and play some significant snaps opposite of him. I think that you could really feel good about this situation for a little while, and then allow him to kind of fall back into a kind of a more backup role, which I think he probably fits really nicely into.
All right, let's talk about the linebackers, because we got a lot of news about the linebackers from the Tuesday practice. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there has never been a better time to get in on the action. And FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. You guys know that I'm backing the Oklahoma City Thunder to win the NBA championship, but go check out some of the MVP odds right now. You can get the series odds. I think the Thunder are going to win in 4 games. I think it's going to be a sweep, maybe 5. Go check it out all on FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head over to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. And if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets, and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Landon, let's transition over to linebackers. And Damone Clark is somebody that we just haven't talked about a ton this offseason. We've mentioned him here and there. But Brian Schottenheimer spoke well about him in the press conference before practice. And then he goes out and he has a pick 6 against Joe Milton and some team drills. Are we writing off Damone Clark too soon?
Listen, I haven't been. I've been talking about him the last few weeks. I keep bringing him up because I do think that something went on last year between him and the linebacking coaches and Zimmer last year that they didn't get along or something, or Zimmer just didn't think he had it. Yeah, no. And I think that it really kind of set Damone Clark back. And again, I do think that when he was forced onto the field when they didn't have a choice, he played good football and he didn't ever get rewarded for it at any point. So, I think he still has. It was funny. I was thinking about it today, and I was thinking about you and my conversation about Kenneth Murray, right? And it's a lot of the same stuff. We're just insanely athletic, right? But more of a downhill player, but struggles sometimes instinctually to kind of sense what's going on, what's happening, how he's getting blocked, that sort of thing. So I think if Borgazzi and Eberflus can, simplify things or make it easier for him to kind of read things and just strip away a lot of the complexity to his keys and just let him play a lot freer, you're going to see a lot more successful player because he plays really hard. He's an incredible athlete. I think people forget, like, there were times in his and Micah's rookie years where he was recording faster GPS times than Micah running around on the field. Like he is that kind of athlete. Like, so I think, we could see, a real breakout potential season if they could figure out a way to just let him play free and could give him some opportunities. I don't know if that means, he's going to get a chance to start or anything like that. I mean, I think it's way too early to discuss that, but I think it's too early to rule him out from those discussions, certainly.
He's just one of the players in the roster that I have no feelings about either way. Like, if you told me he doesn't make the 53-man roster because they go with Shamar James and other guys, I wouldn't be totally shocked. But if you told me he ended up becoming like one of their starting linebackers in week 1, I wouldn't be shocked either. Like, I'm just open to a wide range of outcomes here with Damone Clark. He's going into year 4. This is kind of the make or break year for Damone Clark. Like, this is it. Like, this is his last chance to show that he can be an NFL player. We'll see. I want to make sure I mention this point over and over. Matt Eberflus is a wizard when it comes to linebacker play and getting guys to play way above their heads and developing linebackers and turning them into tackling machines. Damone Clark's got the athleticism. He's got the size. We know that he's an incredibly hard worker. It shouldn't surprise us if he plays the best football of his career this season.
Yeah, it's the Robert Frost, right? A road diverged to the yellow wood. He's got two
Yep.
paths, right? Right
Yep.
now, he could lead to being a starter, which I mean, with his athleticism, the sky's the limit if it actually clicks for him. Or he could, kind of fizzle out. He probably, ends up the contract and then maybe signs to another team and see if that works. But you could easily see him in a situation where it's just he's out of the league in
Yeah.
2 years, or he could be
Absolutely.
a Pro Bowler in 2 years. Like it really depends on whether it just clicks for him. But I agree. Like if it doesn't work under Eberflus in this situation, it just may not work for him.
I do want to point out, like, it's scheme can matter so much for linebackers.
Yeah.
I think a perfect example is Zach Bond. I'm going to keep going back to Zach Bond. With the Saints, he was an off-ball linebacker that could hardly get on the field. With the Eagles, he's an all-pro linebacker that's making massive plays in the Super Bowl championship round. Sometimes a scheme change is all that a player needs. A coach that believes in him and knows how to use that player to his strengths. We'll see. We should also mention Shamar James out with an injury. He did not practice on Tuesday. But Bears Leafau impressed a couple people who were there watching practice. I think it was Nick Harris that said he's added some extra bulk. I've got to believe that's because he's planning on playing more middle linebacker this year.
I would think so too, right? Like that. It seems like to me, you've got the two veterans that are kind of taking a lot of the snaps right now, just kind of showing everyone how it's done. And then you've got the guys behind him, and I think Leafau seems to me like the Kenneth Murray backup, the Mike linebacker type, where you have Overshown kind of the more flow to the football will type. So, I think we'll see as the season progresses how that rotation works, how the progression of the takeover from one player to the other goes. But that's how those are the kind of lanes that I see those two those I guess four players in. And I'm hoping that with Leafau, you saw some really great stuff. So
Yeah.
I really do that he kind of takes that job sooner than hopefully later. By the way, I think that probably we have Damone Clark in that same lane with Leafau, right?
Yeah.
He's probably a Mike linebacker. I think he could
Probably.
probably play Wilson if you wanted him to, but he definitely was probably competing more at the Mike, I would say.
So my question is, who is the will linebacker to open week 1?
Probably Jack Sanborn. I mean, to be honest,
Which is crazy because I kind of think Jack Sanborn is a better strong side middle linebacker than he is weak side linebacker.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's athletic enough to play well. I don't think he's certainly going to blow your socks off with his run to the ball, but he's so smart that he kind of makes up for maybe his lack of athleticism compared to other 220-pound guys, right?
I saw a couple people today actually thinking that maybe Jack Sanborn is the guy that wears the green dot for the Cowboys, and he's the middle linebacker because he knows Matt Eberflus' scheme well, and it's Kenneth Murray playing weak side linebacker, and because that way he can just run and chase to the football. I'm not sure if that's the answer because I think Murray's actually better when he's a middle linebacker.
I do too. I
I
think
don't know.
he's better at playing downhill. I just don't think that you with Sanborn, it's like he can do all of it. Like so, it doesn't really matter. I think you're just putting Sanborn in that spot until Overshown comes back. So I think
But the thing is that could be 10 games, 12 games.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, that's. I mean, I think you like him a lot, and if one of these other guys like Damone Clark, who I think, like I said, I think can play both if you need him to, comes in and steps up to take that spot, that's great. Then he does. But I also think that you probably are playing Sanborn. You can play Sanborn with the green dot at will. That's totally okay too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I wouldn't imagine that. I just imagine that it's safe to put Sanborn with the green dot because I think even when Overshown comes back, you're probably still going to be playing Sanborn a lot because he's going to play Sam and there's going to be 3 linebacker looks. So I just think that it's going to be okay whether it's Murray or Sanborn. The only concern with Murray is that it's like Murray may be the guy that gets kind of shuffled off before even Overshown comes on the field. So I don't know. We'll see how it all plays out.
Could there be a defensive end transitioning to off-ball linebacker? We'll get to that. Plus a Sam Williams update next. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Scouting Show. As training camps get closer and moves are being made, hosts Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. All right, let's do a quick Sam Williams update. He's rehabbing from a torn ACL, but he's on the practice field. He's doing some running. I think he's doing a little bit of cutting. He also looks massive. I saw a picture where he was standing on a scale at 265 pounds and said that he needs to lose 10 pounds before the season starts. He just looks physically bigger.
Yeah, he's enormous, and this is what we've been talking about. Like, I'm glad that I was not the only person who has been saying this, because obviously, Coach came out and talked about it in his press conference, right? He's like, "Have you seen his biceps?" And it looks like not only was he doing work on the cords and running around, but he actually got in individual drills on the open portion of practice. So he is coming along. Like, I think there's a good chance that he might be ready on a limited basis for training camp. So, and again, like, just another guy just coming off the edge. It's suddenly now waves of pass rushers, and also a guy that at that size, the bigger size, you like potentially for getting heavy snaps on the strong side of the defensive end spot, right? The potential of kind of being that more big, heavy-handed defensive end, because he does have that kind of strength. He just happens to also be a very bursty pass rusher as well. So it's interesting, right? Sam Williams is an interesting one of these guys because he is like that kind of tweener between these two archetypes of defensive ends. He's a bursty guy who has the kind of explosive numbers that you saw, similar to Parsons, to be honest. I mean, he's one of the few guys that's actually close to that kind of bursty. But he's also big, and like bigger guy, and he plays with a lot of power that you don't usually see those kind of fast defensive ends play with. So that's why we've always thought that if he could figure it out, he would be an elite defensive end, because he does have just the kind of right blend of traits to be a really, really good professional defensive end.
I remember when he came out of Ole Miss, I was looking at like a database of all the edges over 250 pounds that ran like a sub 4.55, and it was like him and Jadeveon Clowney and maybe one other name. Like, he is a freak athlete.
Yeah,
it's a real bummer that he tore his ACL, because I think he was trending in the right direction.
I agree.
We'll see. This is an important year. He's going into a contract year. We'll see what he looks like. Another name that we just haven't heard a lot about this offseason is Marshawn Kneeland. Like, that's just somebody we've got almost no buzz. I have a feeling once we get to training camp and the pads come on, that's where he'll step up. So, not just a lot of defensive end depth, maybe too much defensive end depth that they're moving guys to linebacker. No. There was a tweet just point that out. There's a tweet that came out during OTAs that Donovan Ezeiruaku, the Cowboys' second-round pick from Boston College, was doing some off-ball linebacker stuff. And when I read that, it's like, oh, he's probably standing off the line, rushing or dropping into coverage. I don't want anybody to freak out here. Like, Ezeiruaku is going to be rushing the passer. That's why the Cowboys drafted him in round 2.
Yeah, I don't think this means that he's even kind of in line for a Micah Parsons type move around role. I think it's just, they do different packages where guys do different things, right? And also, again, we talked about this in the last episode. They're not doing ones and twos, but part of that also means that they're trying a lot of stuff. So they want to see what Ezeiruaku looks like dropping into a zone coverage situation, right? Because there's fire blitzes that have the defensive ends, dropping into the flat, and all kinds of different schemes that involve bigger bodies, dropping to a zone. So yeah, they're gonna, especially these guys that are kind of that size, Ezeiruaku size. He's more in that 245, 250 range, right? They're gonna look at him in a couple different spots, and just to see where they can kind of create mismatches and where they can use his skill set. So definitely, it's an interesting thing to raise an eyebrow over, but don't read into it, I would say.
It's just like Juanyeh Thomas playing the slot, which we should have mentioned in segment 1. I wouldn't be surprised if Juanyeh Thomas gets slot snaps this year, but in these OTA practices, a lot of times you'll have, three safeties on the field and it's a big nickel situation and Juanyeh's playing in the slot. Or maybe Jake Ferguson is lining up in the slot and Juanyeh Thomas is covering him, and a beat reporter who's watching a million different things says, hey, Juanyeh Thomas is playing in the slot today. I don't want to overreact to any of that stuff too much here in early June.
Well, they're also going to be finding ways. I mean, again, not to bring this last segment into this segment, but they are also going to be finding ways to get Juanyeh Thomas on the field.
I think
right. So there's going to be three safety looks, right? That include Juanyeh playing kind of in the slot, as a safety, and it doesn't necessarily mean that his assignment is to play man coverage versus a water bug, slot receiver. It
Wan'Dale
means
Robinson. He's not
exactly.
Wan'Dale Robinson there.
No, he's gonna be dropping into a zone coverage situation or blitzing, or what I'm saying. Like, so I think that there's lots of specialty stuff that's going to include all the things that we've gotten notes on about the OTAs, and so you have to kind of install that stuff here. But it doesn't necessarily mean, hey, Juanyeh Thomas is about to play 200 snaps at slot corner.
Yeah. One of the projects I'm going to do this weekend, because I have no life, is I'm going to go back and look at some of the OTA buzz from the last couple of years and see how much of it actually translates to what we see on the field. Maybe that'll be a fun show for later in the week or next week, is how much of this OTA buzz / nonsense actually matters. Well, we'll find out. All right, Lena, that's it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. On tomorrow's show, we got a bunch of questions earlier in the week. Let's answer some more of them. I think we got like 40 or 50 questions. Let's answer a couple more going into the weekend. So make sure you guys are tuning in for that. Go download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Check us out on YouTube as well. You can follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus _Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.